Okay. Hey everyone, Cream right here, and today I have Mr. Paul Beirne on with us. Mr. Paul is a serial sports startup and turnaround specialist. He's also had the good fortune to be part of three tremendous sports startup success, one being the Toronto Raptors, two, Toronto FC, and three, the Canadian Premier League. Mr. Paul, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Kareem. Like I said a few minutes ago, I like what you're doing. So anything I can do to help.
Thank you again. So, Mr. Paul, can you take us back in time and share with us how you got involved in the beautiful game?
Sure. I fell into sports. I've been working in sports since about 1993. But before that, I was studying music in school, and I worked in some theaters, and I worked in some box offices. And it's the box office that created the link for me to be able to move into sports. So in '94, I'm working on the World Championship of Basketball, which was, I think they call it the World Cup of Basketball now, but it was exactly what it sounds like, and it was held in Toronto and Hamilton, and it was the second time the Dream Team appeared. So the Dream Team, like the Michael Jordan era Dream Team, appeared in '92 in the Olympics, and then '94 in the World Championship of Basketball. So I'm working on that, and one of my colleagues said, "The World Cup is on. We got to go to Detroit and take in a game." And I just went along for the ride. I had never been to a game. I'd never kicked a ball. I'd never done anything, so that was my first sort of opportunity. I think it was Ireland versus Norway. Couldn't tell you who won, but it was at the Pontiac Silverdome, and which no longer exists. But I was probably third or fourth row from the back of the upper bowl, and it was just the biggest spectacle that I had ever been to. And so I just kind of sat there with my eyes wide open, saying, like, "What is this? What am I at?" And then I started working for the Raptors immediately following that event. And I kind of grew up as a business person through the Raptors, and then there was the opportunity to move into soccer. And this was an era when Major League Soccer had zero brand identity in Canada. You couldn't even say that it was perceived as a minor league, because that would give it too much credit. There was just no perception of it. It didn't exist in the hearts and minds of people in Canada. So yeah, like an idiot, I wanted a challenge. I took that on, and I really haven't looked back. It was during that era when we created Toronto FC that I kind of really fell in love with the game. So, but aside from that one World Cup game in '94, I had not been to, or in '94. I had not been to any kind of pro football match or anything.
Right.
So, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Why? Why is that?
It just wasn't part of my world. Soccer didn't exist for me in my experience. So, and then like I said, I was with the Raptors for their first 12 years. And when you're working in basketball, you're so focused, only on basketball. And during that period of time, the Leafs bought the Raptors. So now I was working in hockey and basketball. Yeah, and just like I said, soccer really wasn't part of my experience. So when given the opportunity to take on to bring Major League Soccer to Toronto, it was really starting from scratch at that point. And I just did a ton of research, and I learned about supporter culture. I started subscribing to like 442 and magazines like that, just to try and sort of become a sponge. And what I realized is that soccer, well, just the global nature of soccer was something that was, I suppose I can't say it was a surprise to me, but the fact that it was so much more global than hockey or basketball was really interesting to me. And I thought that kind of dovetailed perfectly with the nature of what the city of Toronto is and was in 2007 or 6. And yeah, so that's when I really started to. The more research I did, the more bullish I became on it. And the more I realized, yeah, we can make something special here.
Hmm. Right. And you've been involved in three different sports. You've been involved in basketball with the Raptors, hockey with the Senators, and then soccer with many different teams. How have you been able to, transition between three different sports in your mind?
Um, well, the business of sport is pretty much the same
Mm,
on the surface. So you got to sell a bunch of tickets. Um, uh, you got to communicate well with your fans. You've got to sell sponsorships. There's a handful of surface things that need to be done well. But once you peel back the layers of the onion, communicating with basketball fans is very different than communicating with hockey fans or soccer fans. And uh, but yeah, I kind of keep to the business side of things. So as a result, you can kind of move around from sport to sport. If I was, picking the team, or if I was an analytics person or something, then it's very different. You have to really become a specialist in one sport.
understood. And out of all of the three sports, which one's your favorite sport?
I lost you there. Did you say what was my favorite?
Yeah, out of all the three,
Yeah,
which one's your favorite sport? Yeah.
definitely football. And it's mostly because it's a combination of I found success there, and I was able to sort of lead the way for. I think Canadian soccer has taken a quantum leap forward from the mid 2000s to today, and I think Toronto FC has a big part of the success of Toronto FC, both the commercial success and the fact that we were suddenly employing some Canadians on Canadian soil at a decent rate of pay to actually apply their living as a player. Um, all of those things combined really uh, allowed soccer to work its way into my heart. I'm still a diehard Raptors fan for sure, and the run they went on a few years ago kind of solidified that, if there was ever any doubt. And I'll always be a TFC fan. Um, but I like these projects. I like what the Canadian Premier League has done. It's taken what what the three MLS clubs in Canada have done, and you know taken a quantum leap forward, because now we have like 100 Canadians making a living in Canada. And um, if you had proposed that 10 years ago, people would just laugh you right out of the room. But now it's kind of viable. There's building some stadiums across the country now, and um, all these things take time. The women's game is going to come too, right? Like all these things um, take time, but when you look back at them, you go, "Wow, look how far we've come in a fairly short period of time." So, yeah.
Absolutely. I did a good bit of research into the CPL, into the league, and who's involved. And I was like, this is pretty amazing, because it's something that's going to be here forever, right? You guys set up the foundation, and it's something that you guys have mentioned and noticed as well, and something that players have been wanting for a long time. Canadian players to have a next level, to reach something to look up to, and that's amazing.
Uh,
To finally have it here in Canada. It's amazing.
and when we were making CPL, we had some key messages that we wanted to just repeat and hammer home. One was by Canadians for Canadians. So this was going to be our domestic league, and people would say, "Well, so are you second to MLS?" And we would always go, "No, you don't." It's crazy to compare leagues. Like, you don't go to an Italian fan and say, "Oh, you're a Juventus fan, so is that like a feeder league for the Premier League?" You don't ask that question, right? And so we always just said, "No, we are Canada. We are Canada's top league, and it's going to start at a certain level, and it's going to improve over time." Right. And then the other thing we were saying was to try and manage people's expectations, that we are building a league for the next 100 years.
Mm,
And therefore, you need to take a long view. You need to be thinking about what's it going to look like in 20 years? How are we going to go from, we started with 7 clubs. How are we going to go from 7 to 10 clubs to 12 clubs to 18 clubs? What are the markets going to look like? Will we eventually be in Barrie or Guelph? I don't know, but we need to open our eyes to the idea that if we want to really be a national league and really resonate with people on the ground in all these communities, then we got to be figuring out how to get there. And so, a place like Halifax, which is one of the real success stories in the league, at least from a commercial standpoint, like they sell a lot of tickets. It is really an important part of the fabric of that community now, and it's only 3 years old, two seasons really because of COVID. So yeah, if it can be that meaningful in a city like Halifax, then that opens the door, because Halifax is about 300,000 people. That opens the door for it to be meaningful in all kinds of communities across the country. And so yeah, I'm bullish that it could become a 2014 league in the not too distant future, say the next 15, 20 years. And that's, to me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is huge. It's massive. Plus, we have 2026, 5 years from now, the World Cup, hosted by Canada, U.S., Mexico, which is huge. I've Toronto FC's in conversation of hosting the World Cup, or
yeah. BMO Field will be a host then, or will be a venue for the World Cup. Yeah, there's going to be likely 10 games played in Canada, and it'll be spread between Toronto and Edmonton. Those are the only two cities that stepped up and said we want it. So I don't know if it'll be 5 games in 5 games, or I don't know how that'll break down. But it'll be amazing. And the idea, again, one of the ideas behind the CPL was we've got a nice runway here of from 2019 to 2026 to sort it out and get things right and sort of figure out how to make a league work properly, because in 2026 it's going to take a quantum leap forward. Suddenly soccer is going to be everywhere, and actually the men's national team is making it be everywhere now, which is way ahead of schedule. I think Herdman's done an amazing job with that squad, and you see 50,000 fans in Edmonton for those last couple of games, and beating Mexico here. Like those are all things that people wouldn't have, they would have laughed at you even 2 years ago. So I think the growth schedule is even going faster than anybody knows.
Yeah. It's interesting how many pieces are coming together right now, as you were saying. It's coming together faster than it's the schedule. Is that what it is? That what you were saying, from my understanding, that it's coming together faster than what's been scheduled.
Scheduled, it was just dreams, right? When we're saying, okay, we got 2026 and it's way out there on the horizon, and that's going to give us an opportunity to grow. But I don't think 3 years ago I didn't think that Canada was going to make 2024. I think we had a shot. I think we would have been, in this octagon tournament. I thought we would have been fighting for 3rd or 4th, which would put us in the conversation, but not necessarily a guarantee. But it turns out the number of games that Canada has played under John Herdman, they went to the Gold Cup as an example. They're playing more games, and they're just gelling as a group of men in a way that nobody would have predicted. Right? He's done a great job of. I think the talent has been there for a long time. I think the chemistry is really in the belief, the belief in themselves and the belief in each other. I think that's really where they've taken a big leap forward. And so all of a sudden, all these things that we were thinking about wouldn't be great if we, hosted a World Cup. Well, we're going to be in the World Cup. We're going to participate in the World Cup in 24. And that's why I'm saying it's way ahead of schedule, because I think it was unanticipated by a lot of people.
Right. I'm going back to 2026. What does this do on a mass scale for Canada, bringing the World Cup to Canada for the CPL? Because you're saying soccer is going to be everywhere, and there's going to be an expansion of a huge amount of growth. What does that do for the CPL?
Well, how old are you?
21.
You're 21. So you were born in 2000?
Yes.
So you were I did that math in my head. So when you were 7 or 8 or 9, TFC was in your orbit, was in your world, right? You're playing the game. You were at North Mississauga, I think, right?
Uh,
I'm
uh,
stalking you.
no, Woodbridge.
Woodbridge, sorry. So you're playing the game, and you've got a pro team down in Toronto, and you probably went to some games, maybe with your team, maybe not, right? But you're the first generation to grow up with that, and you and all your peers, guys that are a couple of years older and a couple of years younger than you. You're the first generation to grow up with a pro team here, and just like Vince Carter has had a massive knock-on effect on the Raptors, and having Drake be such a massive supporter and having the Raptors be such an important part of not just basketball in Canada, but the culture in Canada, and that all can be traced back to the launch of the Raptors, and then the signing of Tracy McGrady, followed by Vince Carter, followed by several years of All-Star performances, and a whole generation of young people growing up in a culture that includes that kind of entertainment and that kind of it goes beyond the game. It goes into the everyday culture of life and walking around in the country. And I think soccer is on the same trajectory, a little bit behind the Raptors, but I also think with a bigger footprint because it is coast to coast, because there are teams in all these different cities. And it's Canadian guys who are the lifeblood of the league. So now it's not only, imagine growing up with the Raptors and having a Vince Carter be on your local club, but Vince Carter came out of Woodbridge soccer, right? Like, or whoever, right? Like that, the next generation of stars are going to be Canadian guys who went to clubs near you, wherever you grew up, whether it was Halifax or Victoria or on the prairies or wherever. And so I think that connection is going to be, I saw it when I lived in England, the connection between the player who grows up inside a club and stays with that club and becomes part of the community in a much bigger way than just kicking a ball on Saturday. And so I'm excited for all of those opportunities in the next 20 years. And so again, when you think to 2026, well, we will have had that first generation of CPL players now come into the league, move on. Some of them would move on, move elsewhere into the industry by being broadcasters or being journalists or being administrators or coaches. I think that we are no longer wondering if this thing's going to survive, and it's more about how big is going to get and how fast are we going to get there.
And you guys already survived COVID. What was that like when COVID first hit? Because you guys already survived it, and then we're at a point right now where you just said we're not even thinking about survival. We're thinking about how big this thing's going to grow.
Yeah, and well, I think the thinking about survival. Bear in mind, I don't work in the league anymore, right? I stepped away, but I think when COVID happened, I think that was a real moment of truth for the owners who, all had come into this with a lot of faith in each other and a faith in their own teams, like the people running the clubs at each place across the country. The support that they had received from the media company, from Media Pro and One Soccer and the corporate sponsors, as well as the communities, the people in each of these communities. I think they looked at that support and they said, well, we've got to do something. And if we can't be flying across the country, let's think about, something different, but let's not contemplate canceling. And so they did the right thing, but in my estimation, they did a bubble. It was a short season, but a bunch of players still got to play really competitive games. And like I said, it was 2 months maybe. It was a really compressed schedule, but they managed to still have a tournament, still have produce a winner, and sort of keep that continuity going so that they didn't lose the momentum that was built in the first year. So I thought they did a terrific job. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've been just going back and forth. I had something organized, but I mean, let's stick because I mean, you didn't start from the CPL. CPL is like the final product of your, your career journey, and then I'm assuming well, I should be asking, the Canadian Premier League project for you was one of the last projects you worked on, right?
Yeah. Today I consult. I help other teams look after their business and improve their businesses. And I may show up at another club in another date, but right now that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Understood. I mean, so what does the beginning of the CPL look like? I mean, how long? When did the conversation start? How long was the conversation until things started to come to fruition?
I think this conversation started in a number of different places. I think TFC came into the league in 2006, and then Montreal and Vancouver were like 2009 and 2010 or something like that. I probably got the dates wrong. So call it 2010, 11, 12. You've got people running sports organizations in Edmonton and in Calgary and in Hamilton and in Winnipeg, places like that are looking at the changing demographics of the company, the country. I was going to say the company, changing demographics of the country, the importance of newcomers and immigration to Canada, the importance of that immigration to those communities. So if you're the mayor of Halifax, you are really concerned with how much immigration is happening and how are we going to bring these people here? How are we going to house them? How are we going to make them feel welcome? How are we going to make them want to stay? Because what generally happens, this is a broad overstatement, but what generally happens is people come to Canada, they settle somewhere, but they gravitate towards the three big cities because there's a Afghan community in Toronto, or because there's a Syrian community somewhere, or a Haitian community in Montreal. So, like I said, if you're in Halifax or any of the cities across the country, you're concerned about retention. You're concerned about not only attracting people but keeping them there. And so they're looking at the demographics of the changing landscape of Canada, and they're saying, what can we do to make these people feel welcome and to have them stay? And sports is definitely an important lever in terms of people's experience in their community, and soccer is the global game. So I think, it's a long answer to your question, but I think that conversation about, okay, what's next for soccer in Canada, that was happening across the country in sporting organizations, in cities who were thinking about building, do we build more cricket pitches now, or should we build, are we still building baseball diamonds? Because as these towns and communities grow across the country, they got to be asking themselves these questions. Where are we going? And soccer just rockets to the top of the list when you have those type of conversations, just because of the growth of the game in North America. So even before I went to England, I went to England in 2014, and even before I went, I had conversations with a guy named Scott Mitchell, who runs the Hamilton Tiger Cats for one of today's CPL owners is a guy named Bob Young. So Bob owns the Tiger Cats. Bob's CEO was Scott Mitchell, and Scott and I had some conversations about what would it take to create a Canadian setup. Concurrent with that, Scott's having conversations with Victor Montaliani, who was president of Canada Soccer. And so all these things were sort of bubbling below the surface. And a couple of years later, I got a phone call saying, I think it's time. We need you to come back to Canada and help us get this thing going. And so I spent probably 18 to 24 months just going across the country looking for places that had the right recipe. We needed a community that really resonated with soccer. We needed owners. We needed people who had deep pockets and a belief in the project, and then we needed facilities because we don't have a lot of outdoor sporting facilities across the country. And
so yeah, that was kind of the process, was to find the right group of people across the country, and then to get them all in a room together and say, here's what we propose. Here's how we're going to be business partners. Here's how we're going to work within the rules of FIFA and Canada Soccer. And here's how we think we're going to roll out this league. And, you know, again, it's been around for 3 years. It took 3 years to get it off the ground. But it was, I think those 3 years were important time to take and invest in and set it up with the right foundational elements, like the governance and the stuff that people don't care about but is really important, the business arrangement and the governance of the league.
So I just want to read a couple of points here. This is from your LinkedIn about you were the president and founder of the CPO from 2016 to 2020, so 4 years. You led the pre-launch and launch phase of Canada's top division professional men's soccer league. You've also sourced 7 ownership groups, communities, and venues, including 5 new stadium projects. I have a question about this one right here. Mm-hmm. So the ownerships. So with the ownership, with all 7 ownerships, did you already have a relationship with them, or did you guys all know each other, or were those things that just came about because everyone had the same intention and you guys wanted to come together and unite and make this thing happen?
Well, first off, I need to correct you. I know it says I'm a founder of CPL, but I'm a founder. There's a bunch, right? There's a bunch of people who can lay claim to that. It's not like I'm the founder all by myself. To answer your question, I think when I think about the first 7 owners, it came together through a number of things. Sometimes it was people who know people, like, hey, we need somebody in Winnipeg. Well, the logical place to go in Winnipeg is to the Blue Bombers and to talk to them and find out what they're thinking. And when it came to Calgary, Foothills Soccer Club was the most ambitious club in that region, and so we went to them first. And that's, at first we were talking to that club and Tommy Wheeldon, and that led us to the current owners, who are the Southern family. So every city had a story, kind of a variation on that. And there were other players, at the start, who all were contributing to the ideas and the growth and the momentum behind, getting this thing off the ground. Not all of them made it past the finish line because, maybe the business arrangement didn't sit well with them, or maybe the costs were going a little bit too high, or the risk profile. There's lots of reasons why somebody might get involved or not get involved. But even a lot of the people who didn't end up getting involved were really helpful along the way. So that was one of the, like when I talk about the time that it took to get it off the ground, that was a really important time for us to really do a lot of learning about what exists across the country and what needs to be put in place.
Got it. And when setting up the league, did you guys look at the MLS, the BPL? Did you guys look at all these different leagues, or was it just, all right, we got America close to us, let's see what their blueprint's like, and let's go from there? How was that process?
That was one. No, we did it like you suggested. We looked at the setup of a bunch of different countries and a bunch of different leagues. The English Premier League is separate from the English Football League. There's 2 things going on there, and they cooperate, but they're separate business entities. MLS, as you know, is single entity, and then below MLS, there's USL and all their tiers. And in other nations, there's other different setups. And so we kind of looked and studied at all of those, but we had to come up with a solution that was very specifically Canadian, because of our, we're different. We have a different football culture for sure, but we have a different calendar. We have a different climate. We have this enormous amount of geography that we have to deal with. And when I talk to my friends in Europe who are in their domestic leagues, and I say that every single match the Winnipeg team has to get on a plane, and they so if they play on Saturday,
they're likely flying on Thursday, which means they lose a training day on Thursday. They're gonna train on Friday. They're gonna play on Saturday. They're gonna travel again on Sunday. Probably take a day off on Monday. So they're really getting Tuesday and Wednesday as training days, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday as training days. When you say that to people in England or France or Spain, they're like they're blown away by how much time is given over to just dealing with the geography. And then you think about time zones and you think about the expense, of all these things. You can't just jump on a bus and drive. Brighton was at the south end of the country, and their farthest opponent would have been Newcastle, and that they can get there in 6.5 hours. In Toronto FC, when I was at Toronto FC, our closest opponent before Montreal came on, our closest opponent was Columbus, which was like an 8-hour drive away, right? And everybody else was 3-4 times that distance away. So because of all the unique characteristics of Canada, we really needed to come up with a specific, unique Canadian solution.
Understood. Wow. Yeah, travel expenses. This is going back to the stadium problem, not having as many stadiums or facilities as needed. How does winter play a part in this, right? Because we don't have summer all year long. So how would you guys go about building these stadiums, right? Because we have winter. We're in Canada.
Yeah, we have winter, and here in Southern Ontario, we have it easy compared to Calgary had a snowstorm in September, and they'll have another snowstorm in June. And they're pretty far south compared to Edmonton. So the impact on stadiums, I think, affects two things. One is the pitches. You really need. It's a real luxury in Canada, and an expensive luxury, to have a grass pitch. To have a quality grass pitch is even tougher. So just thinking about who has a grass pitch in CPL, I think York does, Halifax does, and that might be it. And Halifax has a grass pitch, but there's no undersoil services. There's no heating or oxygen. BMO Field has a ton of undersoil infrastructure, so they can flick a switch and fool this grass in February into thinking that it's April, because they can warm up the soil and they can control the moisture and the light, and so the grass can wake up and be a quality pitch. But you can't do that in Halifax, and so anyway, it's a long answer. But so the pitches is one area in which there's a real push-pull, because you really want quality and you really want grass, but you have the logistics and the facts of life that it is. We're, like you said, we're in Canada, so then it's about finding the best artificial pitches. I should say Calgary has a grass pitch as well, and their grass team is unbelievable, because they're part of Spruce Meadows, which is a big facility that has all kinds of landscape stuff going on there. So they've got one of the best pitches in the country, I'd say, the grass pitches. And so the other way in which it affects things is stadium construction. So I'll give you an example, again, back to TFC and BMO Field. It's an outdoor stadium. The water pipes are built to be run in the summer, but it's like somebody's summer cottage. As when you need to close it up for the winter, you need to blow all the water out of the pipes. This is like the sewage, taking stuff away from it, but also water going to the washrooms and to the food concessions and stuff, as well as the fire systems. So the sprinkler systems. So they've actually winterized it now, but at the time, in the first 10 years of TFC, it was a real expense to close up the place for the winter. And once it was cold, you couldn't play until we had to defrost, until the ground was completely clear of frost, and there was no threat of freezing overnight, because if the water froze overnight, then you'd have burst pipes everywhere and can't run an event if you've got no water going to your food concessions, or if you have no fire suppression systems, and so all those types of factors. So you end up with a bunch of venues that have a variety of constraints associated with them, like they can't open in the winter, or some of them don't have hot water, some of them don't have concessions built in. So again, it's just a bunch of compromises. Halifax has probably the least services in their ground, because it's a bunch of scaffolding holding up benches that create the stadium, but they also are full, and they're in the right location, and they have the best atmosphere, and so people will put up with using porta potties for a while because the atmosphere is so great, because the experience is so great, but they're not going to put up with it forever. So watch for Halifax to make some real improvements to their stadium, or maybe they'll just build a stadium, like a proper permanent stadium. And so you got variations on that game all the way across. I think you're frozen. Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it's a fun question that I had for you later, but I'll ask you now. Out of all the three sports, I know we were talking about Canadian Premier League, but out of all the three sports, I mean, when you said football is your favorite sport, were you talking about football, soccer, or soccer?
Soccer. Soccer, yeah.
So, what's your favorite? So, soccer is your favorite sport. So then I'm assuming here, then soccer is your favorite atmosphere to be in. Out of all
I mean, Raptors has its place in my heart for sure, and NBA basketball. The entertainment package. So speaking now like a sports business person, the entertainment package at the Raptors is completely unmatched. There is so much, planning and programming that goes into what's on all the video boards, and what the Raptors doing, what the dance pack is doing, what the DJs are doing, what Herbie, the announcer, is doing, and it's just it's an unbelievably complicated show that they put on while in and around a basketball game. One of the important factors, it was a success factor for Toronto FC, is the fact that we didn't do any of that. In fact, we said quite actively at a TFC game, and I think this is consistent across the country with all the CPL clubs too. At a football game, the entertainment is the game that's happening and the show that the supporters put on, and then it's about unleashing the supporters and taking barriers out of their way so that they can have smoke, or that they can do their chants, or that they can hang their banners. These are all things that were completely new to me and to everyone at Maple Leaf Sports. When we said we're not going to have a dance pack or a cheerleaders or a marching band or whatever, for the diehard soccer fans, that was like super refreshing. But to people who were used to Leafs and Raptors, it was like, really? They just play for 45 minutes in a row, and then they take a little break and they do it again? Like, no commercial breaks, no time for little kids to run around kicking a ball on the pitch. And we're like, yeah, that's what people are paying for. They're coming to see the game, and that's what we're going to give them. So it was a bit of a culture shift for Maple Leaf Sports, I think, at that time.
This is a little off-topic question that I'm looking at right now, but are you still a menswear at Hype?
Yeah. It's Hype is like a technology accelerator in the world of sports. So all these startups get together and they connect with professional clubs and leagues and governing bodies, and try and match up services that they're building from a software and hardware perspective to the needs of these professional organizations.
I looked into it a little bit before I came across and seen it on your LinkedIn, but I know they do fundraising or raise capital for startups. Do they do that I know on the technology side, but do they do that for soccer side as well, like for a pro team or a team?
No, it's all, this particular accelerator has always been about technology, so hardware and software. Yeah. And now they're moving into like NFTs and the blockchain and crypto and these and the metaverse, right? These are all kind of areas of opportunity and growth for people who are really in tune with where technology is and how to mash it up with pro sports and what any gaming is another one, right? Like where are all these ideas going? And that's kind of where Hype is trying to be, is trying to be right where the future is being written.
Okay, understood. So a little advanced. I know that I think that's. Are you in that atmosphere now with crypto, blockchain, NFTs?
Yeah, but I'm also an old man, and so I'm a little skeptical, But there's no, like, people have made a lot of money in crypto, and people are proving every day that NFTs are here to stay. My challenge is that, well, like I said, I'm an old man, and so on the one hand, I don't see it as working for myself. It's not a thing that I'm interested in personally, but there's no denying that the growth trajectory that these things are on, and so I'm prepared to shut up and listen, and I'm prepared to see some of these things succeed. What I'm not great at is predicting, which trend is going to still be here in 12 months and which one is just going to disappear. So.
Right. Well, I don't know too much about this space at all, but I mean, I'll ask another off-topic question. What do you think about like Crypto.com taking over the Staples arena? If you've seen that, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people forgot that the Staples Center was named for Staples. I think it was just a name, like Madison Square Garden, or here in Toronto we've got Scotiabank Arena, but for a whole generation of people, it still comes out of their brain as ACC. So in the case of crypto, if it was 2 years ago, I would have said, ooh, be careful, because I'm not sure they're going to be around in 2 years. Like when you're in a sports organization, you got to be really careful about taking money in exchange for sponsorship from organizations that have just fallen into money because of venture capital, right? Hey, we just raised $8 million. We're going to put $2 million of it into sponsorship of sports. But if they're not here in 2 years, then that sporting organization has really set themselves back, because they signed a 5-year or 6-year deal, and now the organization is disappearing. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge for sports organizations to weigh out the pros and cons of getting into bed with a partner that you're not really sure about yet. But again, Crypto.com I think is more legit today than it was 2 years ago, and I think the whole crypto space is getting more and more established, and so I don't think it's tenuous anymore. So I do think that they should calling it is it the Crypto.com Center or something?
I'm not too sure what it's called, but I know it's Crypto.com for sure.
Yeah, when sports organization, when it comes to naming rights of your building, I think people need to be a little bit more creative, and like, maybe they should call it the Crypt or something, like give it something that's cool, that still reinforces the brand name. But anyway, that's just me.
Right. I know. Okay, so we're going a little bit back into the conversation here. I was interested to know, 2014 to 2016, you're in England, head of commercials at Brian and Hove Albion FC. I'm not too sure if I'm pronouncing that properly, but how was that experience in England? Because they have a huge established system over there, and did you go to games?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I was there, Brighton was in the championship, so they were in the second tier, and as early as the late '90s, they had been in the fourth tier. So they'd been on a fairly steady trajectory up through the tables. But in 2018, I think after I left, they finally got into the Premier League, and they've been there ever since. What you need to understand about England is that there are 92 pro clubs in a space that is the same as Toronto to North Bay.
92 pro clubs. Like it's ridiculously compressed. So every 5 miles, every 10 miles, driving down the road, there's another stadium, and it's another pro team that you've heard of. You know, maybe it's Doncaster, who have been in the top tier, but now they're in the lower leagues, or Leeds, or you name it. Right? There's so many English clubs that you could name because they've spent some time in the top two tiers, so that changes things. And again, I was running the commercial side of things. That changes the landscape dramatically. If you're Toronto FC and you're working with Maple Leaf Sports, you're a big club in a big city, and you can think about the geography of the whole country, right? You can think about selling sponsorship to Kia as an example, and have that be a national sponsorship. But when you're at Brighton and Hove Albion, you're not going to Kia of the UK. You're going to the local dealership and trying to do a sponsorship with that dealership. So the commercial opportunities, when there's 92 clubs all sharing the whole country, the commercial opportunities are dramatically different. And the importance of getting out into the local community and really being connected to the civic leaders is super important in England. Whereas I think in Canada, we're at Maple Leaf Sports, I think they're masters at sports sponsorship, but they're also very lucky because all of the decision makers for all of the national products are in Toronto. Or that's an overstatement. It's not literally all of them, but certainly most of them.
And
so they have
there's more capital rate, or right? Correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but is more capital raised from sponsorships because it's a national sponsorship here in Canada? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Although in North America, it is less sponsorship and more partnership. And so the difference is, in the UK, there might be, like at Brighton, there's a law firm, and the law firm wants to be a sponsor of the club, and they don't really care. They just want to see their name up at the ground during the games, and they're not seeing that sponsorship of the club as being something that's going to move their business forward. We're not going to get more clients through Brighton and Hove Albion. That's their perspective, and that's I think the overarching perspective across Europe. So it's sponsorship. It's the right thing to do for my organization to write a check. Maybe I run a waste management company, or maybe I run the local car dealership, but it's important to be connected to my community. So I'm going to write a check to this football club, and people are going to see my sign at the football ground, and everything's great. Whereas in North America, I think you're getting more and more demanding partners who are saying, we have business imperatives that we need to achieve. Again, using cars as an example, car dealers make their money in a number of different ways. So it's not just about having the Kia sign up at the ground. It's also about driving the goals that Kia is trying to achieve. Maybe that's getting people into their cars to test drive them. So then they would say, okay, TFC, let's put a program together using your players and using your events and using your social media channels and so on to get people to come out and try and test drive a Sportage or something. So that's kind of the difference between a European perspective and a North American perspective. In North America, it is more about partnership. It's more about driving business benefits in both directions, from the partner to the club and from the club to the partner.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't know that about Europe, so that was cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I know we're coming up here on time, but I had a couple more questions. So going back to Toronto FC, if you don't mind, you were from before TFC was a thing back in 2006. You were there, and my question is, how did you get involved? I'm not too sure if you mentioned it again, but how did you get involved? And then what part did you play in being a part of Toronto FC and making that come to reality?
Well,
I had the really good fortune of being um, within a big sports organization. So Maple Leaf Sports was already Leafs, Raptors, Air Canada Centre, Ricoh Coliseum, Marlies. And it was right around the same time we were adding BMO Field, Toronto FC, Leafs TV, Raptors TV. Um, we bought Gold TV during that time. Maple Leaf Square was being built, the condos outside, and Real Sports Bar and Grill. All of these growth things were happening all at the same time. And so, yeah, when it came to soccer and I started doing all this research, and then my bosses floated the idea that maybe I should run this thing. And I, A, the opportunity, but B, all the research that I had done really emboldened me and got me excited about the idea. But I came up with a bunch of recommendations, and some of them were tough for the organization to take, like what I was talking about, the entertainment package, right? We're gonna minimize the entertainment package because this is about the fans putting on their own show, and that was like I said, it was difficult to sell internally. Similarly, I felt it was really important that we build a new organization. So we hired new salespeople, we hired communications people, and of course team people. On the sponsorship side, we didn't, because we knew that we already had all the great relationships with the sponsors around the GTA. When it came to hiring, I felt it was really important that the team that we hired, I think we had 8 or 10 salespeople, ticket salespeople at the outset. And ticket sales for a brand new soccer club means that you're working the phones a lot, but you're also out in the community a lot. We did pub crawls, and we did events out in the city to bring the concept to the community, so to speak. But I was really proud that that group was incredibly diverse. I wanted it to kind of reflect the people in the stands, and we wanted the people in the stands to be all walks of life, all communities. We weren't just going to cater to the Italian football fans or the English football fans. We wanted people who had a love of football from anywhere in the world to feel comfortable. So as a result, we wanted our staff to reflect that. So so we actually came up with sort of a methodology that was, you can't fake your passion for the game. So if you're on the phone with a customer and they're already skeptical, I don't know if this soccer thing is going to work, and you're faking your love of the game, then the skeptical supporter at the other end of the phone would call bullshit, and they would say, you know what, this thing it's artificial, right? Plastic fans, you've heard that phrase before. And so for us, it was really important that everyone on our staff have a real love for the game and be able to, they didn't have to know the score of every match from the previous weekend, but they needed to be able to be emotional about the game the way real diehard supporters are emotional about the game, so that we could create that connection and that people would go, yeah, this is real. And of course, I don't have that. So anytime I was out speaking to people publicly, I had to put that out right away. Like, I'd have to say, I'm not that, but look at all these people. Look at all my staff. There. Anyway, so yeah, there were some things like that sort of, I think, were good decisions to make it early on to give TFC an opportunity to have a good solid start.
Nice. And this one I was really interested to ask you. It's, what does launching and management of building and opening of BMO Field look like? I mean, first of all, to land a partnership, or would it be a sponsorship or partnership with BMO, and then building that whole blueprint? Obviously, you did it with other people. Mm-hmm. So, how many people were involved? Obviously, no names. And then what does that look like, right? I mean, that's like.
Do you mean the stadium itself?
Stadium.
Yeah. So the stadium was a partnership between the City of Toronto, I think the feds and the province were also in on that, and then Maple Leaf Sports and Canada Soccer. So there are five parties all working together to bring that off. The reason Canada Soccer was involved was they brought the political will to get the thing started. You know, on all the contracts it's called Canada's National Soccer Stadium because it wasn't called BMO at the time, right? It was meant to be to Canada what Wembley is to England, and you know, to a degree it has played that role. It is Team Canada's, or don't call them, but it's the men's national team home in Canada. So all among those five parties, everybody really had a stake in the game. And so that was a little bit like herding cats, but also you ended up with a really interesting stadium. Like in the first 5 or 7 years, the pitch was artificial grass, and there was an air-supported bubble that went over it. You probably may have played in it as a kid.
Honestly, no. I've been there.
Did you ever play there in the winter in the bubble at Pimo?
No, never. I've been to TFC's training ground, played there 1-2 times.
Right.
The TFC stadium, no, I've been there. I've watched maybe like 5 games. Yeah.
Right. But in that stadium for the first several years, there was a bubble, and so anybody could play in that, because in the wintertime it was like a public park. Anybody could play in it. You just had to book it. And that was because that was, you know, part of what the city needed out of that partnership. So over time it's evolved, and it's had some significant changes happen to it. But the original building had something in it for the city, for the province, for the feds, for Canada Soccer, and for TFC.
Oh, when you say the feds, is that like who's that going to? Feds, or is that the government, or?
The provincial government and the federal government, as well as the city government. Like there was infrastructure money that came from all of them.
Okay, understood. I mean that's a huge system backing this one project.
Yeah,
which only means it's going to succeed. I mean, that's pretty cool.
And sorry, one of the things I didn't mention is the reason Canada Soccer, like the timing was so important, was because we won the right to host the 2006 U20 World Cup. Was that it? Was it 2006 or 2007? I can't even remember.
I don't have the year. Yeah. I think it was the Women's World Cup as well, right?
That was 2015. But the money for this came on the back of the Under-20 World Cup, and that was all like part and parcel of Canada becoming recognized by FIFA as being able to support these big events. So first we did a U19 Women's World Cup, and then we did a U20 Men's World Cup, and then we did a Women's World Cup, and in 2026 we're going to do a Men's World Cup. So each one of these events is progressively bigger and bigger, and it's important that we did all those things, because that was part of the journey of convincing FIFA that we can host, right?
Got it. Yeah, sorry, I know we're over time here. Did you have extra couple minutes?
Sure. Yeah, let's finish up.
Okay, thank you. There's 3 committees: local organization committee 2007, FIFA MLS technical committee 2008, MLS business committee 2009. What does it mean to be a part of a committee?
Well, that's, you know, committees are generally where the thinking is done before a recommendation is made, before change happens. So, like, take the TFC or the MLS business committee. There would be representation from clubs around the league. Maybe there were 18 teams at the time, but there might have been 6 or 7 business people from different clubs, and we would talk about issues that are around the business, the operations of the club. Like, take an issue like travel. Maybe this didn't happen, but just as an example, maybe we had 18 clubs all booking their own travel, and all struggling coming over borders, having to do all the paperwork to get your players over the borders, and and staying in different hotels in every city. And maybe the business committee would come together and go, let's look at this and let's see if maybe there's a better way to approach this challenge. And maybe it makes sense for the whole league to do all the travel through one body, and maybe we can fast track people coming over the borders. Maybe we can figure out a way to get out of the city on the night of a game rather than waiting till going back to the hotel, staying overnight, and then going to the airport the next day, because maybe that gains you an extra training day. Back to that conversation. So committees are where conversations like that happen, and then once you get broad agreement on that committee, you take it to the board and you say, hey board, we'd like to make a recommendation that we do this. Here's why. Here's what it's going to cost, or here's the savings that we're going to see. Those types of things. So it's really about the machinery behind the growth of the league, or the growth of Canadian soccer, or the growth of whatever the subject is. Yeah.
Got it. Last 2 or 3, Mr. Paul. I'm not too sure here. What 3 things did you take away from sales and marketing? I can't find it on my question list, but I know. What 3 things did you take away from sales and marketing? 3 tips, or 3 tips that you would share with me about sales and marketing.
Well, I think one of them, I think I shared already, right? This idea that I wanted people to feel comfortable that they were speaking to a soccer fan. And I wanted also for them to feel comfortable that they were speaking to a group of people that represented the city, that represented the Greater Toronto area. I think we stayed away from the word franchise and sales. We gravitated more towards the word club and the word membership. So we're not selling you a season ticket. We're inviting you to become part of the club and become a member, right? And those are 2 very different ideas that really achieve the same result, but one of them affects your heart and has you feel like you're really connecting with something, as opposed to, selling tickets to a franchise is more like transactional. You don't get emotionally attached to a franchise unless you're me and it's McDonald's, but that's a different conversation.
Got it. Okay. Did you have 2 more, or was that just like the main one? What about like digital now? Because we're in the online space now.
That the world is changing a lot. Like, I won't answer my phone anymore. Right, 2006, people would still, somebody's calling, excuse me, and they would just pick up the phone and take the call. So if I don't know whose name is popping up on my screen, I'm not going to answer it, because 9 out of 10 times it's one of these robocalls, telling me that I owe the tax man money or whatever. So the way in which you engage with people, like you said, in digital, it's not emails. You can't just fire out 1,000 emails and expect 900 people to respond, right? So the nature of which, how you get your message in front of people and how you talk to people is changing dramatically, and people don't have a lot of tolerance for any BS. So you got to get it right, and now you're into the world of influencers, and who do I trust online, and how do I trust the message online, and so I think consumers are way more savvy than ever these days, and skeptical as well. So authenticity is important, being genuine and delivering what you say you're going to deliver, all those types of things. And so that goes to managing expectations. If I was running a club today, I wouldn't say, here's my 5-year plan and we're going to win a cup in the 5th year, because I can't deliver that. I just don't know if I can deliver that, right? So it's more about explaining the vision to people, saying what we'd like to do, and here's the steps we're going to take to try and get there. That kind of communication resonates way better with people than just saying, here's a 5-year plan, we're going to get, because if you don't win, you've failed, right? You've set the bar so high, and people are like, I got other things in my life. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And it's easy to walk away. So you're asking people not only to spend their time, spend their money, but you're asking them to give you their time. And that's the commodity that is so valuable to people. So you got to earn it.
Right. Very true. Great points. And last one. I have 6 questions. Uh, your favorite sports team in soccer, hockey, and then basketball. So all three sports. Who are your favorite sports teams?
I'm connected to the clubs that I've worked on because I've become connected to their communities, right? So for me, it's TFC, it's the Raptors. On hockey, I would say it's the Leafs. You know, anytime the Leafs are rolling, I'm on their bandwagon. But I have a real soft spot for Ottawa too. You know, I spent some time there, and I got to know that community. And in CPL, I've got no favorites because I can't.
Okay, got it. What about your favorite player on? I mean, actually, let's not get into that. Your favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh, this is that part of the conversation. I don't know. I like meat and potatoes, and I like fried things. Anything that's bad for me is pretty much what I like.
Do you have a favorite artist? Do you listen to music at all?
I do. Gosh, favorite people you wouldn't have heard of.
You can mention one. I'll check it out after.
And moi, I, I listen to a lot of Radiohead. I really like. My son is introducing me to all kinds of cool stuff like Anderson .Paak, and there's a band called the Allergies that I really like. Yeah, Allergies are out of the UK. They're like a DJ duo. They're really good.
Right. I'll check it out. What's the favorite thing you do in your spare time? Do you just work, or is there anything that you like to do? You know, when you have extra.
I have a 1979 Volkswagen camper van that it's just kind of that's my hobby. So my wife and I like to actually go out on the road and do long road trips in that thing. So I'd say that's my other love.
And what's the best advice you've received in your life?
In my life, don't fuck it up, Beirne. I think that'd be the best advice. Well, you know what? In terms of career and business advice, I think I don't know if this is advice, but for the first half of my career, I was a ticket guy. I worked in ticket systems. I worked in the ticket office. I was selling tickets, doing renewals, and then somebody encouraged me to focus on becoming a generalist and being good at other things. Learn how to sell a sponsorship, learn what media communications is, learn what digital is, learn how to, how TV works. And so be a generalist and also learn how to be a leader, like study how to be a leader. It's some people make it look so easy that you think that they're a natural leader. But the reality is it takes work and it takes study. And so for me, a light went on when I realized that, I could change the way I do things and become a better leader and do better by my staff if I really paid attention to this stuff. And so, be a generalist and learn how to be a leader and invest time and effort into learning, how to be a leader. I think those are the two things that came together at the same time for me in my career. Took a big kind of a leap forward when I started to think that way.
Got it. And sorry, last one. I'm just
the third last one.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. With COVID hitting, and soccer being a physical entertainment, like the sports industry being a physical thing where people have to come to the stadium to get that atmosphere, that feeling, that experience.
Yeah.
So moving forward into the future, after facing something like COVID, what do you think what does that do to the business model? And do you think investing into sports is still a good idea to have that physical aspect, to invest into that physical aspect of things?
Yeah, I do. I think it's something that humans crave, is being in a group of people all looking in the same direction. Whether it's concerts give you, I think, a lot of the same things that going to a sporting event gives you. For a lot of people, they go to church and they worship, and they, again, they're sitting beside. There's an energy that you get when there's somebody right here and there's somebody right here, and you're participating in something together. I think that as human beings, we need that, and so I'm really bullish on the importance of these things in our ever fractured lives, and the more time we spend online, and the more, this whole metaverse that is going to come down the pipeline super fast at us. I think all of those things erode our opportunities to have a real human connection. So I think sports is only going to become more important because of having people come together. And I think soccer is perfectly positioned for that, because of the singing and the chanting, and that's all part of. Did you ever sing in a choir when you were a kid? There's something about singing with other people that is you can sing a song by yourself and you might get some joy out of that, but when there's a bunch of people all singing together, that there's something metaphysical about that is really cool. And I think soccer plays right into that. That's why people love the Viking chant. It's not really a chant, but the Viking clap. It's another thing that a whole group of people do together, and people just love it. So yeah, I'm real bullish on the importance of collective gatherings in the future.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Paul, this was awesome to do with you.
All right, man.
Before we go, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us at One Soccer Nation podcast today.
Excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
See you.